Welcome to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and on this episode, she's back. We are talking to social worker and certified sex therapist, De-Andrea Blaylock-Johnson of Sankofa Sex Therapy, LLC. And of course, I have to throw in a member of the fine sorority of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. Hello, De-Andrea. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I am so glad to have you back. This is going to be a unique episode today because we are going to do Ask the Therapist on the Lovers Lounge podcast. So glad to have you.
Yeah, very glad to be here.
Yeah, the last time you were here, we talked a lot about, oh boy, we talked about masturbation and we talked about solo sex
hmm
and we talked about porn and we talked about so many things. And I'll tell you, it is actually one of the, if not one of the number one shows. People were very, very interested in the information that we were covering. We had talked about having you back on to talk about your book or a book that you are writing a chapter in. So, just to kind of
Yeah.
update the listeners, where are we with the book? And definitely want to have you come back and do that again anyway. But what's going on with the book? What's the status?
Well, with the world changing,
Yeah.
things are kind of put on hold, but I submitted my chapter and we are moving forward, but just waiting for things to clear up so that
Yeah.
we can get it published.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, you just keep us informed. And do you still have, do you have a title yet, or you don't have the title, or can you share, or what's that?
Well, I'm not sure that I can share the
Okay.
title yet,
All right.
but
All
it
right.
is it. I'll just say that it is focusing on
Yeah.
providing sex therapy to Black and Indigenous people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and just different techniques that some people have even created uh, to to do therapy for our people. So I'm really excited about the book.
Yes, I am too. All right. Well, as soon as it is ready and you are ready, please, of course, come back on the show and we will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So let's take a look at these questions that we got for the therapist. So here it goes. So the first question comes from a married lady, and she says, I caught my husband masturbating, and it makes me feel like he isn't attracted to me. Is there something I can do to get him to stop? I mean, we still have good sex a few times a week, but I'm wondering if there's something I should be doing differently. What do you say to that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So a few things come to mind. A lot of times people think that if you are in a partnered relationship, then you should not necessarily have the need to masturbate or to have solo sex. However, I think it's important that you understand that when people, even if they are in a relationship, it's perfectly okay and perfectly normal for them to still have a sexual relationship with themselves. Sometimes you may have different urges and you don't necessarily want to um, be partnered in expressing those, or you just want to experience solo sex because it does feel good.
Right.
So, a lot of times when people are masturbating, it has absolutely nothing to do with their partner. It's just an opportunity to release tension. It could be a stress reliever. It could be just to feel good. So unfortunately, a lot of times, like I said, some people feel that if my partner is masturbating, uh, then maybe I'm doing something wrong. But it sounds like they're having sex, they're having partner sex a few times a week, and it sounds like it's good sex.
Right.
So I don't think that uh, the masturbating is actually taking away from it, but it just may be an opportunity for our husband to just feel good. That's all. It's nothing. It's probably nothing that is personal against his wife, but just something that he's doing, like I said, to relieve stress. Like there are so many health benefits to masturbating. Um, in addition to releasing all of those feel good chemicals in our brains.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
got. I'll go ahead.
I was going to say, oftentimes we have to, because I kind of, I think we may have touched on this before too, and where people kind of have the tendency to take it personal. But it sounds like we
Hmm.
have to, release the temptation to think that it has something to do with you or something to do with what you're not doing or something to do with some malfunction because of you. But that,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. All
And
right.
then also on the flip side of that, I will say I think it's unfair to expect your partner to be readily available for every sexual urge that you have. So masturbating or having solo sex may be a good option for that. For example, if one partner just really isn't feeling it that day, I don't think it's appropriate to just expect them to fulfill that sexual need. Solo sex can definitely step in and fulfill that need for that moment.
Right. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so here's another question from another female. She says, I notice that I'm always able to have orgasms through solo sex and sometimes oral sex, but not during intercourse. I enjoy
Hmm.
intercourse and sometimes even squirt, but I'm not having orgasms. So is there something wrong with me? This is what she says.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. So it's important to understand the way that our bodies work. People with vulvas often need some type of clitoral stimulation
Right.
in order to have an orgasm. And so that clitoral stimulation could be direct, it could be indirect, but the clitoris is an amazing part of the vulva. The head of it has between 4,000 and 8,000 nerve endings, and that is kind of the pleasure center. Although parts of our vulvas are touched, even through intercourse, and it sounds like she enjoys intercourse, but just isn't having an orgasm that way. And like I said, it's because most people with vulvas need some type of clitoral stimulation in order to reach an orgasm. So I
Yeah.
do have a couple of suggestions.
Okay, that's what I was going to
There
ask.
are,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a few different things that you can do.
Okay.
So if if you are comfortable with using toys with your partner, you can definitely incorporate a small bullet vibrator, and you
Okay.
can use that on your clitoris during intercourse, and that can be used in a variety of positions, whether that's missionary, rear entry, the vulva owner on top. Like you can incorporate that in any way. Also, there are various different types of cock rings that will have a vibrating attachment to it.
Right.
And so it serves two functions where it's able to stimulate the clitoris during intercourse as well as providing some vibration to the penis owner.
Right.
Um, so, yeah, I would definitely suggest incorporating a vibrator of some sort during intercourse to see if that can definitely increase your chances of having an orgasm through that type of sex.
Through intercourse.
And
Yeah.
then if you're not quite, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of that, the toy you were talking about, the
Hmm.
the the ring along with the vibrator, I think it's really nifty because it sounds like then it really helps to keep the blood flow there for a while and helps to maintain the erection because sometimes there are some men that may have a difficulty holding an erection for a certain amount of time. So it just kind of helps to ensure that while the vibration is happening with the clitoris, which can sometimes take, a little time for a woman, um, that this erection is being maintained with the cock ring. So I think it's a nifty tool. Yeah. Toy.
Yeah, it's a two for one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a two for one, and I absolutely adore cock rings with vibrating attachments. And there are a lot of different shapes that are available that can increase the amount of sensation that you can have. But yeah, they're great. They're awesome. They're 2 for 1 for that very reason. And then if you're not quite comfortable with using a vibrator, oh, and well, before I move to that, there are also like little finger vibrators that you can use.
No.
That just that you can just hold onto your finger,
Oh.
or that slip onto the tip of your that you can use and then use that to stimulate your clitoris, or that your partner can use. And if you're not interested or comfortable with using a vibrator with your partner, then you can just use your finger to stimulate your clitoris. Now, I will say you want to use some type of lubrication with direct clitoral stimulation, whether that's with a vibrator or with a finger, but you definitely want to have some type of lubrication. And then that'll depend on the types of fluids that you're using. So if you're fluid bonded with a partner, meaning that you're not using any type of barrier method of birth control, such
Right.
as a condom, then you can use different oils. Like some people like to use coconut oil as a lubricant. However, there are other types of lube that are available. So if you're not using a toy, if you're not specifically if you're not using a silicone toy, then you can use a silicone lubricant. And the thing about silicone lube is that it kind of sits on top of the skin and forms a barrier,
Mm-hmm.
so that if you have a lot of friction, then it keeps that barrier there and doesn't absorb into the skin. However, if you're using a silicone toy, then you want to use a water-based lube,
Right.
and that will absorb, but it won't break down the toy, whereas the silicone lube will break down a silicone toy.
Okay. And I was just thinking, as you were talking, one more other thing that I want to go back to when you were talking about
Mhm.
the um the finger vibrator thing and all of that. Um because I guess all of this kind of depends on the woman because like their size and everything. I know I've heard women say to me, friends, and laughing and saying, they just the more weight that they gain, that maybe they're uncomfortable in certain positions and reaching and doing certain things, and so they're like, yeah, that won't work. So that's why different things, right? Different strokes for different folks.
Mhm.
No pun intended. But anyway,
Right.
different tools that can be used, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I actually just this Saturday, one of my homegirls who is a fabulous sexuality educator, Goody Howard,
Mm-hmm.
she just did a workshop, a rideology workshop, and
Mm.
she showed various uh, positions for riding,
Ah.
and they could be used for people who may have some mobility challenges, or yeah, it was just really good, and she did consider some of those different options if you yourself have a larger body, or if your partner has a larger body, and how to navigate that. Um, so yeah, so that's a great resource that listeners can look for. I know that she will make the replay available in the next few weeks.
All right.
But it was great. Yeah,
Maybe she can come on the Lovers Lounge and talk about it. That'll be good. Yeah.
absolutely. She was great.
All right. So we got another question. This is from a gentleman. He says, "My girlfriend never comes when we are having sex. Is she addicted to her vibrator? Because I can't compete with that thing. What do you think?"
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I got a couple of questions about that.
Right.
Well, so the thing about vibrators is that a lot of people think that your clitoris may become desensitized if you use the vibrator too much,
Okay.
and it does not happen. What happens though is that your body gets used to certain stimulation, and so then you need that type of stimulation in order to have an orgasm. That
Ah.
doesn't mean that you're necessarily desensitized, right?
Okay. Okay.
And so That's why it's important that you kind of switch it up every once in a while. And this is for people who have vulvas and also people who have penises. You want to switch it up so that your body doesn't just get used to one particular kind of stimulation, and that's the only way you can have an orgasm. So if you normally use one specific toy and hold it in one specific place, with your dominant hand, maybe try to hold it with your non dominant hand. Maybe move it to a different area of your clitoris. But just to kind of rewire things so that your body doesn't get used to only one type of stimulation. Similarly, for people with penises, if they usually masturbate one particular way, stroking with their dominant hand, maybe switching to their non-dominant hand, maybe changing up the type of lube that you use. If you normally use, and actually people with penises, silicone lube is really good for masturbation because it does not absorb into the skin and you're using a lot of friction unless you're using a silicone toy like a sleeve or something like that. Then you don't want to use a silicone lube. But like I said, like just switching it up some kind of way. Also, possibly masturbating with a condom if you have a penis so that you can get used to uh, that type of stimulation with the barrier method. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I don't come if I'm wearing a condom."
Right.
Well, often it's because they're only used to that skin to skin stimulation. However, if you masturbate with a condom, one, it may increase the amount of time that well, it will delay the ejaculation possibly, and then also it gets your body used to a different type of stimulation. So, to
Oh,
go back to the original question, is my girlfriend addicted to her vibrator? Probably not.
yeah.
But it just may be that um, the body is used to a specific type of stimulation.
Okay.
Um, and also, like I said, most vulva owners need some type of clitoral stimulation in order to orgasm. So that doesn't mean that she's not enjoying penetrative sex. Uh, but if that's all that it is, she may not be having an orgasm. So bringing to is what helps to achieve that.
I'm sorry. Say that again. I couldn't understand you.
So I just said that using a toy
Hmm.
may help to achieve that orgasm,
Okay.
whereas penetrative intercourse isn't doing it.
Yes. Okay. And that oftentimes really is the case
Hmm.
for many women. I know that Dr. Laurie Mintz was on my show some episodes ago, and she has a book called Becoming Clitorate, and she's out of Florida, University of Florida. I think I may have mentioned her when we were talking before, and
Hmm.
she really talks about the importance of the fact of understanding and knowing. For many people, dispel the myth that more times than none, a woman has an orgasm during PNV, penis and vagina.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes that's really not the case. And especially when you
Hmm.
have a gentleman who might be thinking, well, if this didn't happen, then I didn't do my job. Well,
Hmm.
yeah. So, she talks a lot about how this sort of thought process fosters women oftentimes faking orgasms because they don't want their partner to feel as though they haven't done their job. And so they
Yeah.
kind of act like
Yeah.
they've had an orgasm when they really haven't. So yeah, what do you think
Hmm.
about that, DeAndre?
Yeah. I have a saying, and I say it quite often, that you are responsible for your own orgasm. And a lot of people are sometimes taken aback by that because we may often, talk with our friends like, "Oh, he couldn't make me come." No, baby, you couldn't make you come. There are a lot of different reasons why
Yeah.
people may not be orgasming, but part of it is uh, sometimes people don't feel comfortable clearly expressing their desires.
Yeah.
They don't have conversations before having sex about what it is that they like, what the way that they want to be touched. what feels good, what doesn't feel good. A lot of times they enter into sexual situations and kind of expect their partners to just know what to do and know what buttons to press. And so it it feels kind of awkward for people to say, "Nah, baby, that ain't it."
Right.
you know.
However,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. If you do have that conversation, then most likely you'll have a more fulfilling sexual experience if you can say, actually, I like when you touch this, or I really don't like when you do that. So let's do this instead.
Right.
Also, instead of faking an orgasm, there are other ways to end the sexual experience if you're ready for it to be over. You can say, this was great. Are you ready? Are you good? Okay, we can wrap it up, and that can be okay.
And that's okay.
A lot of times, and that is perfectly okay. I think, and I'm not anti porn, but I think that people think that sex should look like how it's portrayed in pornography.
Hmm.
However, pornography is produced for entertainment, right?
Right.
And so, we get the big finish, and the big finish is usually when the person with the penis ejaculates, and
Right.
that signifies that sex is over. However, it doesn't have to happen like that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the person with the penis may not ejaculate, but they can still have a good sexual experience where everyone feels good and is fulfilled. And there doesn't have to be that pressure of, oh, did you come? Or I made you come, or did I make you come? Just understanding that not every sexual experience will end in an orgasm, and that's okay, as long as, of course, there was full consent and everyone is fulfilled.
Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate that people kind of, I guess get these views or these thoughts anyway, these beliefs or these thoughts around sex, P and V, that
Mhm.
that is the ultimate, or that has to happen every time. And I guess then it just kind of fosters or plays into some of what we've talked about, the faking or whatever all. We really do need to take a step back and kind of relearn or rethink intimacy, or that process, that it doesn't necessarily have
Mhm.
to. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about lube, and we have a question here about lube. And somebody feeling as though, I feel like I always have to use lube. Is there something wrong with me? There are a lot of women that, because of different health conditions, right, De-Andrea, things that happen,
Mhm.
changes with the body, that
Yeah.
that lube is necessary, or that they're not as
Right.
moist there. So can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And you pretty much said it. That uh, some people have various health issues which can influence or inhibit their ability to naturally lubricate. And also, sometimes we just don't drink enough water,
Mm-hmm.
where we're not able to lubricate as much. If people smoke, that can, influence it depending on what you ate that day. All of these different things where you could be fully aroused and not have enough natural lubrication. And so that is why we have so many wonderful lubes available.
Yeah.
I talked a little earlier about a few different kinds, but I think that, and again, because I think a lot of people get their sex education from pornography as opposed to open and honest conversations about sex.
Yeah.
Uh, they don't often see the application of lube, and they use a lot of lube in porn, but usually, it's just cut into the the act where they're not showing the preparation, which, like I said, includes lubrication. And so, specifically as our bodies change, for vulva owners, and not just vulva owners, but everyone. When we age, our hormones balance differently,
Right.
and that influences our ability to naturally lubricate. And so, with uh, 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 um, that's not my word here.
That's all right.
With silicone lube, that is one that I recommend for some of my clients who may have the various medical conditions
Mm-hmm.
where they have inhibited ability to produce their own vaginal lubrication because it does not immediately, well, it doesn't absorb into the skin. And so it allows for that friction to occur without more frequent application or reapplication of the lube.
Mm-hmm.
And so silicone lube is really good for that, as well as different oil-based lubes, such as, like I said, I know some people like to use coconut oil, and if you're fluid bonded with a partner, then that's definitely appropriate to use.
Okay.
But yeah, I just really want to help people take away some of the shame that
Yeah.
comes with using lube because it's so wonderful.
Right.
It makes for a lot of, I think, a heightened experience just because when things are a little more slippery, the friction feels better. Whereas I think, unfortunately, a lot of people endure painful sex because they think that something is wrong with them if they need to use lube. They may think it may take something away from the moment if they have to stop and apply, and it doesn't.
Right.
Add that lube and keep going,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you'll feel better.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because I don't know where this negative connotation has come from,
Mhm.
where women feel embarrassed or that it's a negative if you're not wet or I don't know whatever you want to say, but
Yeah.
um, and I think that's where there's some shame around that, like embarrassed,
Yeah.
like there's something wrong with me, like. However, I mean, this is
Mhm.
something that happens quite often. I think I've even heard that women who may have
Yeah.
diabetes, like there's changes that goes on with a woman's body when she has diabetes,
Mhm.
as it relates to sex and
Mhm.
her being moist or whatnot. And then of course
Absolutely.
menopause. I mean, when women enter into menopause and
Mhm.
they're having those changes, that can
Yeah.
oftentimes happen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question.
I
Here's
was.
Oh, go ahead.
Mhm. I was just gonna say I was recently talking with a friend, and I'm 39, so she's around my age as well, and she was having some challenges with natural lubrication, but she also had some other gynecological things going on, like fibroids, and just felt a little uh, shame around asking me. But I'm like, if you got a good friend who's a sex therapist, take advantage, right?
Hmm.
But we had some good conversations about that, and I was able to give her some education around it as well as some good samples. And she gave me a report back that it served its purpose.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I just did a show with Dr. Saketh Guntupalli, I
Hmm.
think his name, Guntupalli. I was so nervous about his name the entire show. I just called him Doctor because I was afraid I was going to say it wrong. Anyway, he talked about patients who have been diagnosed with cancer and different treatments and how that changes a person's sexual, experience and pleasure and whatnot. And one thing he said about
Hmm.
lube was that it was just very important that he knew marriages that were saved as a result of a good lube. And he talked about, not these very cheap
Hmm.
lubes, he said. If you buy yourself a very good lube, he said, I mean, this can be the difference between night and day, he said. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so we had some questions that you and I talked about, but I got another question here that, you don't know about, but I think you'll be fine. So here it is. So
Okay.
the person says that my my husband often wants to have anal sex. Does this mean he is gay or on the down low? What do you think?
Yeah, no. um, so,
There are, yeah,
uh,
some folks that kind of believe that. So I just thought, yeah, I would let you hear this question and see what you say. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and I've heard this question before.
Yeah.
Um, Liking anal sex or enjoying any type of anal play does not make someone gay. Um, so that's sexual orientation, not necessarily, and that's not determined by different types of stimulation that they enjoy. And that could be um, someone who identifies as a man who enjoys anal play on themselves. That does not mean that they are gay
Mm-hmm.
or that they are on the down low, that they are they may not be interested in having sex with a man, but they enjoy anal stimulation. So the G spot for people with penises is actually located inside of the anus.
Right.
And so that's a different kind of stimulation that they're able to enjoy. Uh, but it just has such a negative connotation, whereas a lot of folks who identify as men don't explore that because people will think, oh, you're gay or you're on the down low. When no, they just enjoy anal stimulation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if they, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, to the point where oftentimes you'll find that men definitely will not openly say that,
Mm-mm,
they do, because they know that oftentimes they're judged. I mean, I've literally heard a friend of mine, gentleman talked about how he likes anal sex, and so another man says to him, man, you gay, you got to be gay. And it's just very, very
mm-hmm,
interesting, this negative connotation around this and the thoughts behind
mm-hmm,
it, and how much shame is also associated sometimes with that, even, DeAndrea.
mm-hmm, absolutely. And it's just another opportunity to experience pleasure. But because of homophobia and just negative ideas around that type of sex, a lot of people shy away from it, or they're not even open to exploring it. And so whether someone enjoys uh, anal play on themselves or enjoys doing anal play on their partner, that does not determine their sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is something totally different. Um, but I think that and the anus has a lot of very sensitive nerve endings, and people like for it to be stimulated, regardless of their gender or their sexual orientation. So no, it does not mean that your husband is gay or on the down low. It just means that he enjoys that type of stimulation, or um, whether it's him performing anal sex on a partner or receiving, it doesn't determine his sexuality.
Yeah.
It's just a different type of pleasure to experience.
Yeah, there are, and when you said this, it made me think about it. There are some couples I've read, where the female will wear a strap on and
Mhm.
perform, anal with the gentleman that she is with, her husband, her mate.
Mhm.
She puts on the strap on and will do anal sex to the gentleman. Um, doesn't
Mhm.
mean that he's gay, like you just said. It just means that maybe he enjoys this type of, sex, or another way to be pleasured. Is that correct?
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's called pegging. Where someone will wear a strap on and penetrate someone who has a penis. And yeah, it's basically, like I said, just another opportunity to experience a different
Pleasure.
kind of pleasure
Yeah.
that are unfortunately a lot of people shy away from, or just downright condemn because of the negative connotation that goes along with it, and just plain out homophobia. That's just what it is.
Right, right. I want to go back to something that was mentioned during a question earlier where the female
Mm-hmm.
talked about squirting. Can you talk about what squirting
Mm.
is and how this is sort of achieved or that kind of thing?
Yeah. So there's a lot of controversy about squirting because a lot of people just don't know much about it. So just to point out, squirt is not pee, right? Uh, Scientific studies have shown that the fluid does contain some urea. But if you think of it like a straw, if you are drinking Coca Cola and then you take that same straw and drink water, you'll still have some Coca Cola inside of that straw.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how it works because the squirt does come out of the urethra. So it'll contain some trace amount of urine from the last time that someone may have urinated. Um, but it is not pee. It's not urine.
Okay.
It is liquid that has been processed by the body, but it's not urine. And so a lot of times people may squirt after having stimulation of the basically it's like the underside of the head of the clitoris.
The G spot.
And yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's called the G spot. And like I said, it's located like right up under the underside of the head of the clitoris. And so stimulation there can cause someone infect.
Right.
And there are various amounts like in porn sometimes you'll see people and it's just like a lot of it.
Right.
It might be some people may squirt that much. But then some other people may have just a small amount. It does feel like you're going to pee. But the thing about it is that someone who is like fully aroused, you can't urinate. So just release and let it go.
All right.
Release and let it go.
Now, when you talk about,
And
oh, go ahead. I'm
mhm.
sorry, because I was going to
No,
ask
no,
a
no, go
follow.
ahead.
I was going to ask a follow up on the G spot and touching that. So there's a couple ways that your G spot can be touched, I mean, or stimulated. I would say. Um,
Mhm, mhm,
you've got toys actually now that can specifically made to sort of massage that G spot area for the woman, and then of course a man could use his hand to do that. So can you talk a little bit about that too, and how that would play into the squirting then?
yeah, absolutely. So, um, with the different toys, and they could be a phallic shaped wand, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a dildo. But there are some different wands that are kind of curved that, when inserted into the vagina, uh, at the curve of it does hit the underside of the clitoris, the side, or but stimulating that area is what can make
Costs.
someone squirt.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say that not everyone can squirt, and then
Yeah.
some other people say that everyone can squirt. I'm not quite sure,
Yeah.
but I know that it's a possibility, and I think it might be fun to play with the possibilities. So definitely stimulating that spot, and like I said, it's about 2 inches up into the vagina, on the wall, the wall of the vagina, the underside of the clitoris. It's stimulating that, like I said, with a curved toy,
Yeah.
that can definitely produce that sensation. So,
Yeah. So with this show, I do oftentimes take a look at information on like sex tech. I've been trying to get some people on to talk about some
mhm,
toys.
mhm,
And I actually seen one not long ago where it's specifically designed like with that curve that you were talking about to touch the G spot. And then at the same time on the top end, there's a little mechanism then that attaches to the clitoris at the same time. So you've got the
Mm.
G spot stimulation on the underside, and then at the top, sort of a suction to the clitoris at the same time.
That sounds like a good time to me.
Oh my gosh, you should have seen the reviews and the women talking about it. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
this is out there. This is out there, folks.
yeah. That sounds like a good time to me. I would say with the suction toys, it is important to use a good lube
Lube,
with
yeah.
those.
Back to
And
that.
most of the suction toys are silicone, so you want to use a good water-based lube.
Okay.
You can put it on your clitoris as well as inside of the little suction
Mm-hmm.
part.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever you do, just make sure because otherwise it doesn't feel as good. It's,
Right. It
it's
may be
just dry
uncomfortable.
suction.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you use plenty of lube with those.
All right. So, De-Andrea, what can you remind the listeners of how you can be reached? I don't know if you have social media, like if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, if you have a website, if you have articles that you write, or how can they learn more from you?
Sure. So my website is sankofasextherapy.com. That's S as in Sam, Ankofa, sextherapy.com. And then on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Sankofa Sex. And I post rather regularly for both of those. And I have a few articles that I've written that are posted on my website. And then on YouTube, I'm Ask a Sex Therapist. And Facebook, if you look up Ask a Sex Therapist, I'll show up there as well. But I post pretty regularly on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, De-Andrea. Girl, this has been great. Ask the therapist on the
Yeah,
Lovers Lounge. I had the therapist on the couch here in the Lovers Lounge. This is awesome. Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming back. And of course, when you get that book, when it's all done, let us know. And of course, we got to have you back on.
absolutely. I would love to come back.
Okay. All right. So, listeners, one thing I need you to do though before we go, I want to remind you not to forget to subscribe, to comment, to rate, or to like the show. This kind of helps me understand if you're digging this, right? If you're really liking it. So, I need you to do that. I need you to give me some feedback. All right. Thank you so much for listening to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and until next time, peace. And of course, don't you forget, love